Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm doing my review of WWE's SummerSlam. Starting off the night, we have Triple H coming out. He has a microphone. He hypes up the crowd at SummerSlam, which gets us right into a live performance by Jelly Roll, which I thought the performance from Jelly Roll was absolutely awesome. Which gets us right into our first official match of SummerSlam. It is Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan for the WWE Women's World Title. I thought it was a good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Ripley and Morgan, with Ripley keeping the pace of the match. Morgan then injures Rhea Ripley's shoulder. Ripley then pops her shoulder in place by using the announce table. Rhea then goes for a riptide on Liv, but Liv counters the riptide. Rhea then applies a submission hold, but Liv breaks the hold. Liv then grabs a chair. Rhea then hits a riptide on Liv Morgan. Rhea then goes to use a chair, but Dominic gets involved by grabbing the chair from Rhea Ripley, which allowed Liv Morgan to hit the Oblivion on Ripley for a near fall. Dom then throws a chair into the ring, which he also distracts the referee. Referee doesn't see the chair, which allows Liv Morgan to hit another Oblivion on Rhea Ripley. Using the chair, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match, and still WWE Women's World Champion, is Liv Morgan. After the match, Dominic Mysterio picks up Liv Morgan, and it looks like Dominic Mysterio has turned his back not only on Judgment Day, but as Rhea Ripley. A couple of things I want to talk about this, man. Number one, this was a solid match between Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. Obviously, there was a lot of hostility there between Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan, and the vocal point being Dominic Mysterio. And it looks like Dominic Mysterio finally chose his side, and looks like he has aligned himself up with Liv Morgan. But that is not the only issue that we see at SummerSlam when it pertains to the Judgment Day, which I will get into in a little bit. But again, it looks like the Judgment Day is finally coming to an end. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the Intercontinental Championship. It is Sami Zayn defending the Intercontinental title versus Braun Breaker. Again, I thought it was a good match. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Zayn and Breaker, with Zayn keeping the pace of the match. Breaker then hits a Frankensteiner off the top rope. Zayn gets up, hits a Blue Thunder Bomb on Breaker in the middle of the ring. Zayn then hits an Exploder Suplex on Breaker. After that, Zayn then goes for a haluva kick, but Braun counters, and then Braun hits a devastating spear on Zayn, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match and new Intercontinental Champion is Braun Breaker. Hats off to Braun Breaker for getting the win in this matchup and becoming the new Intercontinental Champion. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the U.S. title. It is L.A. Knight versus Logan Paul. Match was good, man. Logan Paul walks down to the ring with MGK, which I thought that was a nice touch considering the fact that they were in Cleveland, and both Logan Paul and MGK are from Cleveland. The match itself is a back-and-forth matchup between Knight and Paul, with Knight keeping the pace of the match. Knight then hits a neck breaker on the announce table on Logan Paul. Knight and Logan then both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Knight hitting a power slam on Logan Paul. Knight then goes to the top rope, hits an elbow drop on Paul. Logan Paul then hits a springboard clothesline on LA Knight. Paul then hits a springboard acai moonsault to the outside, taking out LA Knight. Logan then lands a right hand on LA Knight for a near fall. Knight gets up, hits a superplex on Logan Paul, which honestly was a bad landing on Logan Paul. Knight attacks Logan's entourage on the outside. MGK then hands Logan Paul brass knuckles. Logan then hits Knight with the brass knuckles, but Knight gets up, hits the finish on Logan Paul, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and new U.S. champion is L.A. Knight. Hats off to L.A. Knight for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It's for the WWE Women's Championship. It is Nia Jax versus Bayley. I thought it was a good match. It was a back-and-forth match between Nia Jax and Bayley, with Jax keeping the pace of the match. Jax then hits an Annihilator on Bayley for a near fall. Jax then hits a Samoan drop to the outside on Bayley that looked absolutely brutal. Jax then goes for an Annihilator, but Bayley counters it with a powerbomb. Bayley then hits an elbow drop off the top rope. Tiffany Stratton's music hits. She comes down to the ring. She tries to get involved in the match, but Bayley ends up fighting off Stratton. Jax then hits a powerbomb with a distraction from Tiffany Stratton on Bayley. And then Jax hits two Annihilators on Bayley, pins her for the 3, and your winner of the match and new WWE Women's Champion is Nia Jax. Hats off to Nia Jax for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. Highly pretty much profile matchup, marquee matchup of SummerSlam, the match that everybody was waiting for. It is Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk, with a special guest referee being Seth Rollins. I thought this was a great match, man. Now, it was a back-and-forth matchup between McIntyre and Punk, with Punk and McIntyre exchanging in the middle of the ring. Punk was trying to keep the pace of the match, but McIntyre hits a powerbomb on Punk for a near fall. McIntyre then grabs a chair. McIntyre then goes to hit Punk with a chair, but Rollins grabs a chair. McIntyre then goes for a Claymore kick, but Punk counters the Claymore. Punk then hits an elbow drop off the top rope on McIntyre for a near fall. Punk then applies an Anaconda Vice, but then Punk gets his bracelet back from McIntyre. McIntyre then gets up, hits a Claymore kick on Punk for a near fall. Punk then goes for a GTS, but then Punk stops, sees Rollins with the bracelet. Punk then hits a GTS for a near fall. Punk and Rollins then argue. Punk then hits a GTS on Rollins. McIntyre then gets up, hits a low blow on CM Punk, which ultimately has McIntyre hit the Claymore kick on Punk, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Drew McIntyre. A couple things I want to talk about with this match, man. This match was great. The matchup between McIntyre and Punk, man, it was a marquee matchup at SummerSlam. And honestly, the matchup had a lot of resemblance to the 1997, I believe, SummerSlam, when it was Shawn Michaels being a special guest referee against Bret and Undertaker. And if you actually look at Rollins, Punk, and McIntyre, their attire alone that they were wearing to the ring had a lot of resemblance to that match. You had CM Punk come out to the ring wearing the black, pink, and white attire, obviously resemblance to Bret Hart. You had Seth Rollins somewhat looking like Shawn Michaels, but then you look at Drew McIntyre coming out with a trench coat just like Undertaker did back in 1997. Had a lot of resemblance to that SummerSlam matchup between Bret and Shawn. It was a great match, man. It was a great moment. Tells a great story between McIntyre, Punk, and Rollins. And obviously, this storyline's far from over. I don't think Punk and McIntyre is done. And I think the Rollins and CM Punk is starting to heat up again due to the fact that Punk hit a GTS on Rollins during this matchup. So I think Punk is going to have his hands full with Seth Rollins moving forward, which is going to be a great matchup. And who knows, that match could possibly happen at Bash at Berlin, which I'll be absolutely all for seeing that matchup between Rollins and CM Punk. But hats off to McIntyre for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. Is for the World Heavyweight Championship. It is Gunther versus Damian Priest. Again, I thought this was a great matchup, back and forth matchup between Gunther and Priest, with Priest keeping the pace of the match. Gunther and Priest then both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Priest hitting a Hurricane Rana on Gunther. Gunther then gets up, hits a powerbomb for a near fall. Priest then hits a choke slam for a near fall as well. Finn Balor is here. Balor is trying to help out Damian Priest. Gunther then attacks Finn Balor. Priest then hits a Razor's Edge on Gunther in the middle of the ring. Priest then goes for the finish. Priest then goes for the cover, but Finn Balor puts Gunther's boot onto the ropes, which breaks the pinfall. Priest looks confused on why Finn Balor helped out Gunther. Looks like Finn has turned on Priest. Gunther then applies a sleeper hold on Priest, but the hold is broken. Gunther then hits a powerbomb, and then Gunther applies another sleeper hold on Priest. And your winner of the match and new World Heavyweight Champion is Gunther. Hats off to Gunther for getting the win in this matchup. A couple things I want to talk about with this matchup as well, man. This is something that I mentioned earlier on in the podcast when it pertained to Judgment Day. That it looks like the Judgment Day is finally imploded and is no more. You had Dominic Mysterio turn his back on Rhea Ripley and align himself up with Liv Morgan, and it looks like Finn Balor has also turned his back on the Judgment Day by turning his back on Damian Priest and allowing Gunther to get the win over Priest to become the new heavyweight champion. So again, it looks like the Judgment Day is coming to an end and is no more, or is definitely imploded. And at this point, it might just be JD McDonough, Rhea Ripley, and Damian Priest are part of Judgment Day at this point, if it's not already done and finished with the Judgment Day. So again, looking forward to Monday Night Raw. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of answers on what really the hell is going on with the Judgment Day. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of WWE SummerSlam. It is a Bloodline Rules match for the WWE title. It is Solo Sikoa versus Cody Rhodes. Again, I thought this was a fantastic match, man. I mean, the opening of this matchup, seeing Cody Rhodes, coming out of the tour bus, walking out down to the ring with Pharaoh. It was Pharaoh's last time being involved in, I guess, a matchup, if you will, with Cody Rhodes. But the other thing that was a vocal point in this matchup was, or one of the vocal points, was seeing Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson obviously aligned himself up with Cody Rhodes when Cody was working with AEW. And to see Arn Anderson in the back letting Cody know that he's not alone, that he made some calls to make sure that he has backup if anything happens with the Bloodline getting involved in this matchup between Rhodes and Solo Sikoa. So I thought that was a great moment to see Cody again embrace Arn Anderson, and Arn Anderson being back in the WWE, at least for SummerSlam. The match itself, like I said, man, it was a great match. Back and forth matchup between Sikoa and Rhodes. Rhodes and Sikoa both exchanged in the middle of the ring. Sikoa was trying to keep the pace of the match, but Cody hits a Cody cutter on Sikoa. Sikoa then hits a power bomb for a near fall. Rhodes then hits a moonsault off the top rope, taking out Sikoa. Rhodes then hits a crossroads. Bloodline is here. Bloodline ends up attacking Cody Rhodes. Then Kevin Owens' music hits. He comes down to the ring. Owens attacks the Bloodline, but the Bloodline looks like it's too much for Owens. And then Orton is here. Orton then attacks the Bloodline. Orton and Owens both hit an RKO and a stunner. Cody then hits a crossroads for a near fall. Rhodes then hits Solo with the steel steps. But Sikoa gets up, hits a spear for a near fall on Rhodes. Rhodes hits another 2 crossroads on Sikoa. Jacob Fatu is here. Fatu then attacks Rhodes. Fatu then hits a splash off the top rope to the outside on Rhodes through the announce table. It looked like Jacob Fatu ended up injuring his leg in that move. Cody then gets up, hits a Cody cutter. Roman is here. The fans erupt. Roman then hits a Superman punch, taking out Solo Sikoa. Roman then hits a spear on Solo, which allowed Cody Rhodes to hit a crossroads on Solo Sikoa, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match and still WWE Champion is Cody Rhodes. A couple of things I want to talk about when it pertains to SummerSlam, man, before I get out of here. Solid show. SummerSlam, to me, is always going to be WWE's one of top 4 pay-per-views every single year. With that being, obviously the Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, and WrestleMania. It's always the big 4 for me personally as a fan of WWE. Did SummerSlam deliver? Absolutely. I think there was a lot of high-key matchups and marquee matchups a part of SummerSlam that took place on Saturday. Obviously, there was a lot of vocal points going into last night, and even after not last night, but after SummerSlam, that a lot of people were talking about. Number one being what is going on with the Judgment Day. Obviously you had Dominic Mysterio turn his back on Rhea Ripley and align himself up with Liv Morgan. And then you had Finn Balor kind of turn his back on Damian Priest, which allowed Gunther to get the victory over Priest and become the new WWE Heavyweight Champion. And then the other biggest one was obviously Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns coming back. The fans erupted. I told you guys that I would not be surprised if Roman did return to SummerSlam and attack Solo Sikoa. And then the biggest thing with Roman was the shirt that he was wearing was OTC, which stood for the original Tribal Chief. Roman being back is great. I think Reigns being back into the fold, obviously he's coming back as a humongous babyface in the company now that he's going after Solo Sikoa to get back the head of the table as far as the Tribal Chief is concerned. So obviously there's going to be a Civil War bloodline here between the original bloodline and the new bloodline. And I think this is going to be one of those high marquee matchups that it's just going to be intense. And the storyline is just going to continue to keep going on until we probably get the Survivor Series, where we get, the 4v4 or 5v5 War Games matchup at Survivor Series. Now, there's a lot of other names that might be involved in the storyline now. I mean, Cody Rhodes might be a part of this bloodline storyline with the fact that Roman did help Cody get the victory over Solo Sikoa. Obviously, Roman's going to be going after Solo to get back the head of the table, which I'm all for that. But how does Cody Rhodes factor into this? How does Jimmy and Jey Uso factor into this storyline? Do Jimmy and Jey realign themselves up with Roman to take down the new bloodline? Who knows? I think the story writes itself, man. I mean, the other thing is, too, is that if you look at other matchups, like you look at Sami Zayn defending the Intercontinental title and losing the Intercontinental title against Braun Breaker. And then if you've seen on Raw, Zayn and Jey Uso have been a part of a lot of tag team matchups together. So this could be something where we get the original bloodline again versus the new bloodline, where we get Roman, Jimmy and Jey, and Sami Zayn, and maybe Cody Rhodes versus the new bloodline with Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa. I know there's also been speculation of Hikuleo also coming over into the bloodline storyline. I know the other big name that's floating around, obviously, is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Does he come back into this storyline with the bloodline? And, who does he align himself up with? Is it the new bloodline with Solo Sikoa, or does he align himself up with Roman Reigns? Or how does he get involved or how is there any involvement from The Rock in this Bloodline storyline that's starting to heat up again now that Roman Reigns has returned and has attacked Solo Sikoa. SummerSlam was awesome, man. SummerSlam was a great event. I think it was about 60,000 fans at the Cleveland Browns Stadium this past weekend for SummerSlam. Obviously, the live performance from Jelly Roll, Triple H kicking off the show. We've seen Stephanie McMahon in the crowd, sitting ringside for SummerSlam. It was a great show, man. I mean, it kind of gave off vibes of old school SummerSlams from way back in the day. And I think having SummerSlam in that stadium was awesome. I think it was a great show from top to bottom, a lot of great moments, and a lot of great storylines leading into, this week's Raw and obviously SmackDown. What's going to happen with the Judgment Day. I know Monday Night Raw tonight, we get the in-ring debut, if you will, of the Wyatt Six. And then we also, trying to figure out what's going on with the Judgment Day as well. And then, when it comes to SmackDown, what's next for Cody Rhodes and what's going to happen next now that Roman Reigns is officially back and going after Solo Sikoa with this new bloodline. So, I mean, again, WWE is firing on all cylinders, man. And they're full steam ahead. I think the next pay-per-view, or PLE, if you will, would be Bash at Berlin. I think it's a big deal. And it's also a huge deal for Gunther. I think Gunther, I'm a big fan of Gunther. Obviously I known him from when he was Walter and his run he had with NXT and the creation of Imperium. But I think Gunther would be a great World Heavyweight Champion. Going into Bash at Berlin is going to be great for Gunther, especially with him being World Heavyweight Champion. And who knows, there could very well be a rematch between Gunther and Priest at Bash at Berlin. That very much could happen. Obviously, and again, the Seth Rollins and Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, and CM Punk matchup was a marquee matchup, man. This was a match that everybody's been waiting to see for months, and we finally got it. And it was a great match. It was a great moment and a storyline within itself. I mean, now that, Punk attacked Rollins, is Rollins going to go full steam ahead to try to have a match with CM Punk now that Punk is back and he's healthy? What happens between Punk and Drew McIntyre moving forward now that McIntyre beat Punk? There's a lot of storyline alone in that matchup as well. And again, it kind of gave off vibes of what I believe was the 1997 SummerSlam matchup between Taker and Brett. And I believe it was 1997, the SummerSlam matchup where Shawn Michaels was a special guest referee. And it told a great story. So, I mean, again, it's just, SummerSlam was great. It was awesome. And to me, to see Roman come back and coming back as a babyface, obviously helping out Cody Rhodes with the attack that he had on Solo Sikoa. I mean, like I said, man, WWE is firing on all cylinders, and I'm definitely anticipating Monday Night Raw tonight as well as Friday Night SmackDown. So, again, man, they're firing on all cylinders. But with that being said, this is my review of WWE SummerSlam. I hope you guys are out there staying safe, be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.